And yet, there is not a single platform today that would help a marketer optimize the customer experience from the top of the funnel all the way to the bottom of the funnel. Why is that? This is the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve. Why is it with all the smart people in the room and in the valley, no one is actually solving this big problem? Why? Well, because it's hard. That's right. Why is it hard? It is because, very simple, because no one knows what the primary key is. Let me explain. So of course, right, you would come back to say, well, what about Criteo, right? Criteo is helping me retarget into the upper funnel. Well, sure, but it's yet in the channel, right? Isn't Criteo just bought by an agency recently, right? What about retargeters, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, it's announced. Okay, sorry, it's a rumor. Whoops. So these are different channels, right? That is actually will reach, in many ways, the technology, the data that is residing in these sits in different silos. And you have no idea what the primary key is to tie it to your lead gen campaign or your e-commerce campaign or your e-commerce website. And so that's not quite fair, right? Because just down in Cupertino, many of you are familiar with a company called Blue Kite, or there is a company that Nagy was CTO of called Turn that has recently developed another DMP. Isn't DMP data management platform? Isn't that going to solve all problem? Well, DMP is the biggest marketing name ever created. Data management platform, right? Because what else is not data? Until you realize the data that they are talking about is third-party cookie data, primarily, right? So really, what DMP is really trying to solve is to collect at the top of the funnel cookie level data so they can aggregate and distribute if you only care about cookies. When it comes to device ID, well, they have a little bit of a hard time. When it comes to postal address, you cannot really do it. At the bottom of the funnel, of course, many of you who are working on CRM systems, right, will realize that there are companies like Acxiom and Experian and so on that manages customer relationship database to tie together known audience data. But today, the problem is companies that are trying to aggregate data at the bottom using primary keys such as your email address and things like that, these systems are not connected to the top of the funnel. There's not a single agency today that is willing to share the impression and exposure data with the client CRM team. In fact, if you walk into a major American corporation, in the same marketing department, there are two groups of people who don't talk to each other. Those that are at the top of the floor are the TV advertisers that work at the top of the funnel, and those at the basement are the website developers, the CRM marketers. So this is a problem. Never mind the fact I just told you about the funnel. Somebody have said the funnel is dead. Anybody know why the funnel is dead? It's because none of us are linear people. We don't go from like, okay, I'm in the awareness phase now. Let me go to the consideration phase. So the funnel is dead. So what are the opportunities? I talk about a lot of problems, but what are the opportunities? So here it is, right? I'm going to use a diagram. Anyone have seen this diagram before except those from Acxiom? Right? Some of you have seen it. So Gartner tried to encapsulate basically all the technology in the space into use cases that are mapped into different rail lines. And the main point of this is if you are a technologist today, you can work in companies that work on different parts of different use cases that a marketer needs. And there are just many, many use cases. So forget that. Let's not look at point solutions. Actually, I have a lot to say about this slide for another topic. So the solution, the opportunity that's waiting for all of us, the summit that we are all trying to climb is this. We want to provide the right message at the right time on the right device for the consumer. If we focus on that, there are a number of things that we can do to really capture this opportunity. Let me do a time check. I tend to get carried away. How much time do I have left?
You have lots of time.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to share with you today about 4 topics, right? The opportunities, in case you wanted to put in some VC funding, right? How do we solve this problem, right? This is a multi-trillion-dollar problem. Those companies that will solve the fundamental problem will read dominant positions in the marketplace, and as a result, gain monopolistic positions, right? So problem number 1, recognizing the customer inside. Number 2, recognizing the customer outside. Number 3, how to measure your efforts systematically. And finally, know, quote unquote, know the person. Okay. Problem number 1, opportunity number 1. Recognizing the customer insight. Right? So this is meant to talk about the different silos of data in your company. In your company, you have a team that's working on media trafficking. You have a team that's working on CRM databases. There's another team that collects Nielsen data for TV advertising. What is your effort to tie them together? So really, what this is about is how do you become customer-centric, and why do you want to do that? So I'm going to give you one quick example, right? There's going to be a lot of details here, but why be customer-centric is because of this, the diagram. Right? We're scientists, we want to see diagram, right? So through the customer journey, if you are looking at a traditional customer, if you think like a traditional firm, you are going to be losing money during the attraction phase before the customer value for that customer become positive. That's what advertising is, right? Advertising costs money. You need to lose money before you make money, right, so-called. And then during the customer retention phase, right, is you have made a lot of money for the customer. Most likely, the customer is going to leave anyway, right? So because over time, the value is going to eventually drop off because there will be churn, so-called churn rate. So if you focus with a customer-centric perspective, right, the entire idea here is throughout the customer journey, how do you improve during the attraction phase? Even at the very first step, do not attract people that are going to be loss leaders. They will make a purchase right away. For example, can you define audience propensities that on the first visit are the people who are most likely going to convert? If you're not doing that, you are losing money. Similarly, on the tail end of this, if all of your effort is on acquisition marketing, the left-hand side of this, and you are not trying to reduce churn rate, you are following this curve. Customers love your products and brand, right? Many of us are Apple customers. Do any one of us spend less with Apple every year? No, I seem to spend more and more with Apple every year, right? So for some reason, right, Apple is not a customer-centric company, but for some reason, right, they are able to retain the customer value. So what effort do we have deliberately to increase the customer value? That's one idea. Opportunity number 2. Recognize the customer outside. So the whole notion here is we know how to collect data about people that come to my website. But what data do we know about people who we don't know? How do we know what we don't know? So the idea, I would like to share this credit, right, with my colleague, Dr. Jay Chang, the Chief Analytics Officer for Axiom. So we need to know the differences about terms, because they are not all the same. There's a notion of the consumer, there's a notion of the customer, and there's a notion of the audience. These three things are not the same at all. Consumer in the US, above the age of 18, there are 150 million Americans who you can target. By law, right? You cannot target anybody below age of 18. COPA. At the same time, within your customer list, you may have 5 million customers. And so if you are going to be creating an audience, you need to be very clear that within this audience, you also have those that are your customers and those that are not. And these two have very different characteristics in terms of conversion rate, in terms of customer retention, and so on. What strategy are you using, or what technology are you using to empower the marketer to make this differentiation? Number 3, measure your efforts systematically. Everybody talk about measurement, right? Measurement sounds great until people ask, how do you measure? So this is what some marketers call closed loop marketing, right? Marketing is not just about a 30-second ad on the Super Bowl, because you can't really measure that very well. So over time, when we think about marketing, we think about just the targeting event, right? We want to blast an email list to everybody. But if you only do that, that is a telltale sign something is really, really wrong. Because the question first, before you target, is how do you know who you are targeting are those that you're supposed to target? So in other words, how do you recognize the people that you need to recognize. This turned out to be a precise problem. It's not just a rhetoric, and I'll be precise in a second. So once you recognize and plan and really created a plan for your customers and consumers you want to target, then you go and execute the targeting right through Deep Forest Media. Then you want to start collecting data, not just measurement, not just exposure data, right? You want to know how does it tie deep to the thing that I care about, right? Never use CPA as a metric, cost per acquisition, because you will go bankrupt that way. I'll explain why in a second. You want to measure on things that matter, right? Customer lifetime value. If you're not measuring customer lifetime value, how do you know over the long period of time you're actually accumulating value for your company? And of course, all of this, you want to do it in a consumer permissible way. You don't want to be creepy here at all, so that you can optimize the campaign. You have to do this iteratively, right? There is not a single campaign in the world that you start that is going to be successful in the first one. You have to iterate, test, and target, right? Okay, so that's one systematic way to think about closed-loop marketing. And I'm going to talk about the recognition thing in a second, right? Which is about knowing the person. How do you recognize the person? Well, who am I? I literally mean that. Like, who am I? Well, I appear at Starbucks. I work at Microsoft. I have an iPhone, and so on, right? And I watch TV. Well, this is the visual I want all of us to think about. If we measure some channel, we get some approximations of who I was. But how do I get a single view of the customer? How do I aggregate across channels, across touches, in order to know my propensity, my interest, what it is that I like to do? So, to answer that, I want to use a diagram. And this is a very beautifully driven diagram. And there are many companies in the valley here that said, well, knowing the person means this. Entity reference grouping. So what is that? There is a collection of IDFAs. There is a collection of cookies. There is a collection of emails that seem to behave in a way that allows me to infer something about it. And for many folks, if you will read ad exchanges, right, this is called cross-device recognition. The problem is, remember the Rebecca Jones example that I gave earlier. If you are only recognizing the person by correlation or statistical ID, then all of a sudden, how do I know the devices that I'm browsing at the office is related to the device that I will convert on for purchasing Hawaii vacations at home? Well, you don't, because you don't know the fundamental question, right? So in this problem and the solution behind this is not entity. This is not real recognition. This is just grouping. Grouping similarly active things. The real problem that we're trying to solve is this. There's a group of identifiers. These are not entities. These are names, postal address, landline, mobile, email, device ID, cookies, right? Each one of these is not a real identity. They are just proxies for some grouping. What I wanted to do, right, and this problem in information quality is called entity key selection. So what is that? I'm going to talk through a few things, I won't go through it. Is I want to map the set of identifiers, these are fake stuff, right, into something that is real, an ID. And this ID could be at the consumer level, could be at the address level for a point of interest, it could be at a household level, a TV, for example, or a mixed-use device, is never going to be at a person level. If somebody trying to tell you they're going to target a person on a TV, walk away, because you can't do that today. So who is actually doing this advanced recognition stuff? Well, here are a few companies, right, that you may have heard of that are doing this. And as of yesterday, there is a new entrance in the space, Facebook Atlas. There's an announcement yesterday. Atlas is come back alive from the ashes, right? And as part of that solution is the ability to across using Facebook ID as a way to do recognition. So to summarize, customer-centric opportunities. There are a lot of companies that are working on this today, and every one of these 4 areas is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. And I hope that folks in this room will participate in this very exciting journey coming up to help really solve the real problem in marketing. Thank you.
So we have some time for a few questions, and I think Pashu is going to just take the mic to you. So because it's being recorded, so please wait for the mic.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Mittal, founder of a company called SpotZark, and we think of us as a mobile DSP for offline purchase. Everything you've said gets compounded because we have no online cookies, we have no data on transaction. Ultimately, someone has to walk into the store and buy something. So my question is, so the challenge for us is how do we actually connect the offline transaction to all the online signals you're getting? And I'm interested in hearing, thoughts from you.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And of course, this offline to online, online to offline, right, is one of the canonical problems that companies like Google and Facebook would love to would love to solve. So I can tell you from my personal experience, as well as some of the clients that we're working with, part of the problem can be solved. So there's a slide I don't have here that I can give you an example. If you are an identity supplier, if you're Amazon, if you're Google, if you're Facebook, right? Let's take Google, for example. You do a bunch of searches. And when somebody search, you want to tie that search keyword to the fact that they actually made a purchase in your store. How do you do that? Well, one way that you can do that is, so here's an example. At the coupon redemption event, because this is a simple example, right? Everybody can do it. Is after you search and you land on a landing page, say, go print out this coupon, do it, bring it in store, and then you are set. Of course, everybody can do that. And I'm sure folks in this room can go back and tie this system together. But it is very cumbersome. Right? Google has tried this. It turned out to be the scale. It's very hard, right? Because we don't want to go print out a 2D barcode to bring it in store. And so companies created these applications that you can go to say after you do a search, let me send it to a text to your phone, so you can actually click on the text that would create a 2D barcode on your phone when you do a in-store purchase. That is also very cumbersome, and it's not very scalable. And so a third way to do this is to work with these vendors who actually has identifiers about you when you do a search. For example, you would log into your Facebook account, you would see a particular fan page, you would click on it. Now, the next day, you would carry your credit card, walk into Macy's, and swipe. How do you tie those two things together? What's the primary key? Ultimately, that's the problem. It turns out the primary key is very clear. If you are using one of the recognition vendors that I showed you earlier, Macy's, as soon as you swipe, they know who you are. If only there is a vendor that would allow the Macy's data, CRM data, to be matched, first-party data, to be matched against the Facebook first-party data, registration database, then the problem is solved.
That's never going to happen.
It is happening today.
Not through the way you're defining it.
There are 3 companies that are doing this today. The largest of which is Axiom. The second largest is LiveRamp. The third largest, so first of all, LiveRamp is not doing Facebook, but it's doing another big companies here. DataLogix is doing this, and Epsilon is doing this. If you are large enough as a company, any of these companies, any of these 4 companies that I mentioned, would be more than happy to talk to you about how to help you connect your search marketing to your offline purchase today.
How do you solve the privacy?
So, great question. You know, nobody asked me about privacy. So this is certainly a challenge. But it is actually a very real question that we need to solve. at the heart of it, right, when you talk about primary key, you're talking about PII, personally identifiable information. So you want a Switzerland, if you may, who is trusted by both parties, right? So here's the issue. No advertiser in the world would want to share their customer data with Google or Facebook or Twitter. Nobody, right? Just ask around the room. Why? Because how do I know these guys will not tweak, like the CPC, right, against me? At the same time, there is no platform player on the planet that will share their first-party registration database with a marketer. But their interests are both aligned. They want precision marketing for the advertiser because they can get high conversion rate. The publishers want precision marketing. Why? Because they want to get high CPM, and cost per mil. Only if there is a trusted third party in the middle that would do the matchmaking between the first-party database of the marketer and the first-party registration database of the publisher, then this is solved. And so the company that I mentioned earlier today are providing that that trusted service, mediating between the advertisers and the publishers. The big problem is it is still a relatively expensive operation. So for the Fortune 500, no problem. And for the smaller guys, solutions are being developed by these guys.
Am I hearing you right? Are you saying that what you guys are is the new experience, the new?
OmniView? No.
No, I mean, this sounds like a brokerage, right? This sounds like I am depositing my social, credits. Who I am, what I am. It's kind of like your FICO is owned by Experian, and all these three companies. There's a brokerage where you go in and you ask, about your FICO score, say, is this guy has the right credit?
Yeah.
It sounds like you were talking about creating a brokerage for the social coefficient.
Okay. So I think you are asking a very wide-ranging question, right? Are we trying to create a FICO for the digital world? So let me take a step back, right? To look at a 10,000 feet perspective, we are in new territories here. Right? So as startups and companies in the Valley, we should be thrilled that we are advancing the envelope for the humankind, right? Improving the human condition. And the human condition that we're trying to improve here is to create a relevant experience, a meaningful experience, every point of the way, whether you're online or offline. So that you don't get bombarded with things you're not interested in, but things that actually matters to you at the moment on the right device that you care about. So from that perspective, what are the technologies that are needed to get that done? Well, first of all, you need a connectivity service. You need to be able to connect these various platforms that don't talk to each other. Unless Google or Facebook buy each other, they would never talk to each other. Right? Similarly, for Apple and whoever else. And so as long as there are these mosaic of IT systems that exist across the ecosystem, you need, in order for them to interoperate, you need a connectivity service. And today, that connectivity service is only beginning, right? So many of you heard about Axiom purchasing a company called LiveRamp recently. And the motivation of that is, of course, to help these various federated systems so that they can be connected with each other, so that data can be exchanged between these very large parties. Now, is there a need for a FICO service? Well, I'll let somebody who is smarter than me to decide whether such a system need to exist in the digital world. I suspect it will not look like FICO. It would be something different.
The brokerage, the trust, today Visa and American Express don't get along, right? But nevertheless, when you go to your FICO store, and they both use it, right? So for your purchasing, you have Visa, you have Amex, and whatnot. And you go to a brokerage or whatever, the trust entity.
A co-op or whatever.
Right, or Experian, right? I mean, that's what they are, that's what you're talking about, right? So somehow, the reason I said it doesn't work is because you have to solve the privacy issue.
Right, so first of all, privacy is relatively easy to solve compared to the larger question that you answer. The reason that those companies that I talked about exist is because their right to win is to handle large amount of PII in a privacy compliant fashion in ways that companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter cannot handle. And so these companies for many years have been working closely in compliance with federal laws and so on to actually make this connection work. But the larger question of FICO and consumer credit and all that stuff, I will let the next VC in the audience or the next company in the audience to discover how to solve that problem.
So Phil, getting back to your presentation,
Yes.
I'd like to pick up on the customer journey slide that you were talking about. And I noticed you cleverly took out the time dimension, because I guess there's a lot of variation across industries on how the time dimension works. I am responsible for operating a mobile gaming business where the time is shrunk so much that you're looking at 7 days and 15 days life cycles of customers. So you have rapid acquisition, you have rapid retention, but you also have even more rapid loss of customers. So given that situation, how does the strategy that Axiom goes with, that aggregating first party, second party, third party data, go towards creating better quality, say lookalikes, better quality profiling, to be able to create better quality retention? Because that's been a challenge for most mobile gaming companies. And that's one of the reasons why, and we're trying to attract brand dollars, and it's been a challenge.
Great question. So, so when I heard you said mobile gaming, you are basically taking the whole channel-centric perspective that I talked about and slice it even further. It's mobile and gaming. And so, mobile, as many of us know, still has the problem of having low conversion score, right? Low conversion rate. And if you only look at that as a channel, then you are looking at only one sliver of the entire customer experience. So the point I would like to make is, for companies like Axiom and many of our competitors in the space, we would like you to look at it from a customer-centric perspective, not when a customer is opening up an Angry Bird on their iPhone, but look across what they are doing. And for example, ask the question, among those that convert best on your e-commerce website, how many of them actually play games? If it turns out that none of them play games, then perhaps gaming platform, mobile platform is not the best environment for the advertising to happen. On the other hand, if it turns out when you look at the customers that have the highest customer lifetime value over time, many of them are acquired through playing Angry Bird on an iPhone device. Guess what? Direct all of your marketing dollar to advertising on Angry Bird on the iPhone device. So the notion I want to step back from is away from a channel-centric perspective, but look at it from the value or customer-centric perspective.
So suggesting we broaden the dimensions from a behavioral standpoint. What other applications they're using, what other devices they're using.
I'm not suggesting it is easy at all, right? I'm not suggesting it is easy at all. I think we are the first inning of a 9-inning game. So the future in marketing technology is so bright, we need to wear sunglasses. A question. I know the professor wants to ask a question.
Yeah, so,
Hold on a second.
So the issue of privacy came up, and the other side of the coin is trust. And you referred to trusted, you referred to not creepy. But a lot of people find this stuff creepy. A lot of people don't trust anyone. Is there any part about actually sharing the surplus with the customer and paying the customers for the use of this information that might create sort of a perception of sort of more fairness, and that would in turn lead to greater trust? Because right now, I think that's a big problem. I don't trust anyone. It's just, and it is creepy.
That's a great question. Can I suggest, when we get down to privacy, this could become a 3-hour discussion. So if anyone has a privacy question in the future, right, let me restrict this. This is the last privacy question, and we'll answer it maybe during the dinner time, right? So let me address that question really quick. Well, it just turns out, as many of you know, Axiom, the company that I work for, is one of the largest consumer data companies in the world. And last year, we launched an experiment exactly like what the professor suggested, which is, by the way, the website is called aboutthedata.com. And if you go there, what you can do is, as a consumer, after you authenticate yourself, right? Because here's the problem. In order to show you the data, I need to know who you are, right? So you need to authenticate yourself first. And once you authenticate yourself, we tell you what we have collected about you And you can opt out everything if you want. It will wipe the database. Or you can go line item wise, say, I don't want to look like I am 36. I want to look like I'm 25. And you can do that. And so here's a remarkable fact. In this past 1 year of experience, the majority of users that came in and modified their data, for those who logged in, the majority of the consumers not only did not opt out, they opted in to say, I want to give you more information so that I can get more relevant content, I can get more relevant offers about me. So the ratio is not even small. It's over 10x difference.
I have a comment about the data. I actually happened to go to the site and enter my information with the hope that I'll receive less crappy ads. And one of the disclaimers that was there on the site was, if you opt out, it won't stop you from getting ads, receiving ads. You'll just receive more crappy ads. How do I deal with that?
Wow. So first of all, let me iterate something. I don't remember reading that line.
It is there. I can testify. It is there.
But the idea here is, right, before, let me address that for a second. We are in a capitalistic society, last time I checked, right? And there is no big brother here, right? The most that any private company can do, right, such as Axiom, is to help those customers that we know about, that are connected on channels and devices that we have connections to have a better experience. We don't have control over companies that don't necessarily want to play with Axiom. And so
You
I
don't
think,
work for NSA?
let me not address that. Let me finish addressing this question. So at the end of the day, right, we are here just trying to provide a service. Like the problem that we are trying to solve is to help marketers create better experience with a consumer they're trying to get in touch with. And that's it. And along the way, we make guesses. We have opinions about what consumers and marketers should reach out to. And along the way, we open up the option for the consumer to tell us how to correct those opinions. And then that's it.
I don't want to be misinterpreted. It's still a great idea. I mean, no one else has done it before, so.
Yeah, it's certainly a very bold idea. And many of you who have not tried, encourage you to try it out. It's cool. Yes, the gentleman in the back.
Yes. I suggest you could solve a lot of your problems by improving your model. And I think what you're hearing here is, we hate the advertising models that you guys all come up with. You say recognize the customer, recognize the inside, recognize the outside. Maybe a better word is identify. And the problem is you guys are using PII to do that, which opens up a whole Pandora of problems. And as a consumer and the seller, they don't really care about their names and their social security number. The only people that care about it are you guys, the advertisers. So what I'm proposing is use feelings. If you know I'm thirsty or tired or hungry or happy or sad, you can probably find a product I'll buy right now. Most of my decisions are emotional. Most decisions are emotional.
I can tell you are an
I didn't
emotional
see one
person.
parameter.
Okay, that's fair. So let me address that for a second. When we talk about data, we need to be precise about what we're talking about. Because not all data are the same, right? There's data about intent, there's behavioral data, there's demographic data, there's propensity data, there's conversion data, and then there are all kinds of other data. And some data are more predictive than others. So for example, many folks in the room in the ed tech industry work on so-called OBA data, right? Online behavioral data. The problem with OBA data, I'll give you an example, right? There are, like, the most monetized data on the web today is auto-intender data, right? So what's auto-intender data? Is tell me people who are likely to buy a Mercedes-Benz. Because if they convert, I'm willing to pay a lot of money, right? The problem is, how are these data collected? Well, not Axiom, other companies, right? Put a pixel onto websites about Mercedes-Benz. For example, mbusa.com is the Mercedes-Benz USA website. And so they said, The only reason why a consumer will go to mbusa.com is because they are an auto intender of a luxury European automobile. Are you kidding me? How many of your 16-year-old children visit mbusa.com? So all of a sudden, like, what are you looking at, right? So the problem here is not what data people tell you you can use. It is about the predictive power, the usefulness of the data that you actually collect. So that's point number one. I want to make one more point about this before I move on. And the point is, the reaction many of you have about the word PII as if it is a bad word. Let me just step back for a second. So many of you know when you walk into Macy's, when you walk into Nordstrom, walk into Radio Shack, or the Apple Store, right? When you swipe your card, of course you are identified as who you are. And is it okay for a Apple Genius employee, knowing that you are interested to buy an iPhone 6, to walk up to you to say, hey, I notice you may be interested in an iPhone 6. Let me tell you the difference between the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. First of all, let's think about that for experience. As an experience. That is an awesome experience. Because first of all, I don't know whether the iPhone 6 Plus requires 2 hands and whether that's too much, right? If somebody does that to me, that saves me a lot of time, and I would like to be informed. And that is a pure, in that case, it could go from an anonymous experience, where I'm just browsing, to a PII experience where the person actually knows who I am. And many of us are okay with that. So I want to step back to a second, right? If you are working with a trusted party that takes care of your PII data, many of us would not object to this third party for using it for my benefit. And so, in that sense, let's not